Welcome to the Savvy Entrepreneur Show. Now, if you're an entrepreneur or a small business person, you're thinking about becoming one, this show is just for you. I'm Doris Nagel, your host for the next hour. I'm a serial entrepreneur myself. I've advised startups and small businesses as a consultant and a lawyer over the past 30 years. And I'm here to share what I've learned and also find others willing to share as well. The show also has a second goal, which is to inspire. How about you? But I found being an entrepreneur sometimes pretty lonely, confusing, discouraging. And I always found that talking with other entrepreneurs and listening to them share the stories of how they work through challenges just like those you and I face is inspiring and encouraging. So, to help with both those goals, I have guests on my show every week. And my guest this week is Nora Kerr. She's the founder of a company called Memoir For Me. She's going to talk with us today about her business, as well as some things about how to capture your life in a meaningful way. Nora, thanks so much for joining me this week. It's a delight to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Talk about your business. What does your business do?
Sure. So I founded Memoir for Me back in 2015, and our goal is to capture those often told stories around the dinner table and collect them into a nice keepsake book for families.
Are these usually for around an event, like in a wedding or a graduation or a reunion, or are they more someone's life or either, depending on what people want?
Yeah, either way. Sometimes it's to celebrate a milestone birthday or even a Christmas gift that then we work on for the next year.
Oh,
But there's really no bad time to do it, is what I always say.
yeah. So how do you produce your memory books? Well, how do you go about doing that?
So the thing that makes us really different from some of the other competitors that are out there is we collect the stories through personal interviews. That's kind of
Ah.
our secret sauce. So I think we all know that stories are told differently than they are written, and
Yes.
I think there's magic in having someone to share your story with and to ask the right follow up questions. Someone that might not know the ins and outs of a family, and I always say like the curse of knowledge that some families have. They don't think to ask certain questions to clarify. So I'm a stranger to families and I come in and I ask all those point blank questions and
You,
really
you,
kind of get at the nuggets.
I was just thinking as you were talking that your job and mine are in many ways similar because one of the things that I've found over the past 3.5 years that I've done this show is that a lot of entrepreneurs really appreciate the opportunity to step back and tell their story because they don't really get to do that very often, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's fun to sit back. It allows you to reflect and kind of connect dots. And for me, when I was asked to do this, it was a quick and easy yes because one, I love talking about it, and two, it gives me kind of reignites that fire in my belly to keep doing this work.
Yeah, exactly. How would you describe a life story and why are they worth capturing anyway?
Life story can be anything from, I like focusing on the everyday kind of ordinary, beautiful stories. A lot of my job is education. People think they have to have these extraordinary lives to almost earn the ability to tell their own story. But really, it's those everyday kind of just ordinary moments that really, to me, define a life. And so life stories can be anything from just memories of childhood, high school antics, who are you friends with? I love asking about family meals, childhood bedroom. What did that
Ah,
look like? Who'd you share it with? With regards to family meals, like who cooked those meals and what was your favorite? What didn't you like eating? And who was at the table and who was making the most noise and who was quiet? So just kind of painting a picture of and otherwise ordinary life, but I don't know, all those kind of small moments really add up to really define someone.
I'm envisioning that what you do must be pretty rewarding because I have no doubt that lots of your clients just light up and they probably start out thinking, well, I don't really have much to talk about. And then you get them talking about some of the stories, and all of a sudden you can just see their faces light up. And you probably don't get to be there when they actually get to open the book, but it would be fun to be a fly on the wall when they do that, wouldn't it?
Sometimes if we do have local clients, I do hand deliver them.
Do you just for
And
that very
and
reason?
yeah, I mean, there is a payoff in seeing their reaction. And I mean, they will have seen the book in different parts along the way, but it's that kind of unboxing experience that we hear
Yeah.
about a lot.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And just the culmination of so many hours of work on both sides, not just ours.
Well, are your memory books, are they mostly photos with narrative, or are there memento items that are scanned? Or, I mean, I'm trying to relate it to my world of scrapbooking, where it's really a kind of a almost a 3D effect that a lot of people use with different items and different edgings and finishes and fabrics and things like that. Compare that experience to what you produce.
Yeah, so they are printed. It is not a scrapbook type of product. They are equal parts photo and story. And that was intentional. I have a photography background as well as a writing background. So
Ah,
the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, I feel like, why choose?
ah,
So I love them both together. And we seek out pictures that support the stories and always have plenty of room at the back for additional pictures. And this is something they're going to have for years and years to come. And
oh yeah,
I
these
am
are treasures.
well aware that they may not read the whole book in one sitting, but they might pick it up and look at some pictures, check out some captions, and put it down. Other times they might do a more deep dive on the story. So it really kind of has something for everyone.
Very cool. It reminds me a little bit of a Christmas present that my sister and I did a couple years ago. We decided to put together a family cookbook that was recipes, and we tried to also weave in some of the stories because obviously a lot of family memories happen around food, particularly when you grow up in the Midwest in a farming community. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think everybody in the family just really enjoyed it. Even if they didn't use it as a cookbook, it was just a heck of a lot of fun to see all the pictures of gatherings around food and different kids in the family shoveling birthday cake in their mouth or whatever, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Talk about why you decided to start this business. When did that happen and how?
Yeah. So I think I have a pretty special origin story. I was in a totally different line of work before. I was an IT project manager.
Holy buckets
I
with
kind of
that.
chased a paycheck for what was it, over a decade. I
Yeah.
started as a technical writer. So I started in writing and then grant writing and that sort of thing. And then just kind of evolved. And I was not surprisingly unhappy, unsatisfied. My father, meanwhile, had been going through rounds of chemo and stuff with prostate cancer and was essentially living with it for quite a while in remission. And then it came back with a vengeance. And at that point, it was in 2015, we had gotten that word that there wasn't much that they could do. You have maybe 6 to 8 months, enjoy it. And I did not handle that well, as you could
Wow.
imagine.
Yeah.
I
Bitter
didn't, he's
pill.
just, yeah, it was a bitter pill. And I was unhappy at this job. And I was interviewing and actually using a life coach, like career/life coach, to try to figure out my next move because I knew I wanted it to be like really different.
There's nothing like a life-changing event like a death of a parent to really make you aware of how short and precious life is. And
Right.
if you're not happy doing what you're doing, it's pretty natural, I think, to start asking some questions like, life is short. What am I doing? How am I making a difference here with my life, right?
Right. And I wish at the time that some of those connections were being made, but it wasn't. It was more just kind of like I was flying by the seat of my pants. And, you do those analytical type of questionnaires to try to figure out where your skill sets are, where your interests are. And it always came back to storytelling, interviewing, writing, just all these kind of basic skills that I was trained for in college and just kind of got away from. And I, on my own, told my coach, telling her about my dad. And I said, I'm going to tell my dad's story and it's going to be for my family and I'm just going to do it. And, didn't know what I was doing, didn't really have any kind of systematic process or even thought about what it would look like. But I just started asking him questions that, I always kind of wanted to know the answers to and just evolved from there. And it was this really beautiful experience. And life changing is doesn't even begin to explain, right? Some of the things he was so vulnerable with me and shared things that he had never before shared with me.
How
And
amazing.
yeah, it really was just a powerful experience. And so I'm bringing this back to this life coach who's she's just like, Nora, like this could be it. I really never wanted to be an entrepreneur or never really set out to be, I guess I should
You're
say.
an accidental entrepreneur, or
Total
maybe
accidental.
or maybe you're what a couple of other of my guests have said, which was I became an entrepreneur because I didn't know what else to do.
Right.
And I thought,
Or
well, that's
nobody
not
else
how
seemed
they
to be
teach you.
doing it.
That's not how they teach you in B school, but I guess it's more common than you think.
You hear about people seeing like a hole in the market and no one else is doing it. So there's your case study, right? So, I had that in my head. I didn't have any comparable businesses of to compare, to try to set this up like or anything. And so it was definitely a lot of stumbling for a while. And I did some projects for free for some of my friends' parents and just to
Uh,
try to get some kind of process and repeat, something that would be repeatable.
you have a background as a writer. You also have
Mhm.
a background in IT, and there is a certain, probably not inconsequential technical end of being able to mass produce, or I shouldn't say mass produce, but systematically produce these in a way that is predictable and consistent and produces what you want it to do at the end, and that you're a photographer. So, from a skill set perspective, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, well, and Doris, wait till you hear this. I mean, this is 20 years ago, I went to college and I had even forgotten about my senior year thesis, my writing thesis, because I was actually a writing major, creative writing major, was family stories.
Oh,
So it
wow.
really did come full circle. I had in college told the stories of my mom and her three sisters and loved doing it, but put it on the shelf and kind of forgot about it. And it's just funny when doing this exploration work on my career, like it all just came back to that. Not
Wow.
just writing, but truth seeking and storytelling, connection making. Like it's almost like therapy light, you know, because the interview process is really my favorite part of the whole thing.
Who are most of your customers, have you found? What are the common threads that you see among the people who pick up the phone or are willing to write the check and want to go through with this?
So it's usually adult children with a little disposable income with aging parents. So it's kind of like that 40s to 50s, maybe even, yeah, late 30s to late 50s are the clients and they are buying it for their parents. I have gotten
Oh,
a few parents doing it for themselves, and those are some of my favorite projects because um, they're the ones that see the value in their own story. So
right.
it's just a lot more fun. But usually there is some kind of, like I said, there's some education involved. There's almost like a winning over involved when I first sit down with interview subjects to kind of just get them comfortable. with talking about themselves and seeing the value in their own story.
So how do you go through the process of sorting through photographs? Are you often there to photograph the event if it's event based, or I mean, I find having done you and I were talking before we started recording that my sister and I just finished doing a scrapbook of my mom's life. And boy, oh boy, the process, I have to say, the most time consuming. Yes, it was time consuming to enlarge the photos and lay them out and write the narrative. The most time consuming, honestly, and maybe this is because we were too close to it, was trying to sort through the boxes and boxes of photographs to figure out, oh, this is perfect. Oh my God, I've got to include, and yeah, if you include all of them, my goodness, no one would want to even look at it. And it wouldn't be,
Be
it
an
would weigh a
encyclopedia.
ton. It would take up an entire bookcase. So how do you tackle that challenge?
Yeah. So when a client signs on, they get a what we call a roadmap document that kind of lays out our process. And the first step is photo collection. So it's actually on the client side to collect the photos that mean the most to them. And we give suggestions on kind of like almost like buckets to, pull from. So childhood, school years,
Yeah.
wedding photos, early childhood, like thinking chronologically of a life, just 5 to 10 photos in each of those buckets. And I do it intentionally before our interviews for two reasons. One, so they can start looking through their life retrospectively.
Yeah, that'll trigger some memories right
Right.
there, looking through the photos.
And two, so that they don't worry about finding the exact photos to match up the stories that are told because we haven't told them yet. Yeah, because that can really hang up the process when people are really trying to line up everything just perfectly. And I say, this thing is going to happen organically, and the photos and the stories will just meld together. Yeah, that's kind of our process. So we ask for a certain amount of quantity depending on how long we're sitting down and interviewing somebody, but anywhere from 50 to 100 pictures, kind of spanning
Wow.
a life. Yeah,
So, how do most of your clients find you? Word
changed
of
over the
mouth
years.
or
Yeah,
what?
a percentage of our business is referrals, and those are always, I think, kind of the best ones because they're already supportive and on board, and they've usually been eagerly recommended by a past client. COVID did a number on us from a perspective of we
Oh,
were hyper local before, so
didn't
I
think
was
about
doing
that. Yeah.
interviews in person, and so a lot of our clientele. I'm based in Jefferson Park on the northwest side of Chicago, so most of my clients were in the Chicagoland area. And then COVID happened, and we had to move our interviews all to Zoom. And then I ran some Google ads nationwide, and they took off, like really took off.
Oh, great for you.
Yes. So there was a like, oh my gosh, like, can we even support this? We even did have to kind of dial back and tell people, great, we'd love to work with you. We can't do it for 6 months. There was some of that happening, and thankfully it was okay. We did kind of stabilize, and we got some. I have some new team members on board that are wonderful, and yeah. So I'd say about half of our business now is just from Google Ads. So both coasts. I had an interview yesterday with someone in Glasgow, Scotland. So
Wow.
there's really no limit thanks to technology.
Well, so it's funny you do hear about some of the silver linings of COVID, and it sounds like for your business that really was one of them. You were forced to kind of break out of you know, the box that you had put yourself in, for lack of a better way to put it, and just basically just bust out of all that because of COVID.
Yeah, I was worried it would lose some of the personal nature that I think is really special to our company and how we do things. But especially with Zoom, when you're looking at someone face to face, and I mean, it's not the same because I do believe in like an energy transfer that happens in person, but it is darn close. Especially, we're sitting down with these people for up to 8 hours. So that's several calls.
Well, not
Um,
only that, but you're talking about some very personal kinds of things. It's not like you're having a staff meeting, you know.
right,
You're asking them and expressing interest in learning about who they are as people and some of the most memorable parts of their life. You're encouraging them, I'm imagining, to be fairly vulnerable, maybe more vulnerable than they're used to being. And that tends to foster connection, I think.
for sure. Yeah.
So, what were some of the biggest challenges when you first got started?
Oh, so many challenges.
Oh, I know. This is the fun part where you share some of those pain points that I'm sure there are lots of fellow travelers who are throes of those right now. So
Yeah,
help make them feel better by sharing some of those.
sure. I think the thing that I'm actually still struggling with is, pricing is a challenge. And I think this is also unique to women business owners that we don't perhaps value our work the way we should.
Bing, bing, bing. I agree with
Yeah.
that. Yes.
I I think there's also complications for me personally because it started out as something that I love to do. And so it's hard to view it as a job. And so I have a hard time being objective when I price that.
Well, and you
So
put yourself into it, I'm guessing, which tends to lead to scope creep, maybe, or I don't know. I'm
I would say
using
that's even an understatement.
a
Yes,
level of
for sure.
perfectionism, a desire for perfectionism that would be great if it was your own for your family, but if you're running a business, not so much.
Right. So there's been a lot of lessons learned, like scope creep is a big one. But once I started getting outside help to help, with pieces of the project, I found myself upside down on a project or two, price wise. So that was a
Ah.
learning experience.
Oh, because you actually had to put a value on the time because it was outsourced as opposed to coming out of your own hide.
Yes, there was more than one project that I actually paid
Ah,
more than I received. And that was
ouch.
early on because I was still kind of just figuring out time involved and that sort of thing. So, and it's just such an emotional thing too. I just wish there was some magic number because this it isn't, unfortunately, it's not something that is like this project is going to take me exactly 103 hours. Like,
Ah,
some they vary wildly.
yeah.
So there are ranges. And so I try to stay within those ranges, but that has been a learning curve. And frankly, I'm confident that I am still underpriced. And so
Probably.
I have to kind of figure out what that number is and what I'm comfortable with too.
I'm blessed because I could talk to a lot of my guests for hours, frankly. They're just amazing people. And what I get to share with them is a privilege for me every week. But I'm lucky in a way that the radio station limits me to an hour because
Right.
that is my boundary. And so they've helped me out by doing that. But I'm guessing even in your case, I mean, some of the people you get talking to and an hour, 2 hours has passed by and you're like, oh my goodness, I only allotted, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just imagining anyway, because people get yakking when they start opening up and, one thing leads to another. And especially if you're sitting there with more than one person, the interplay is just a delight. But, they'll be like, hey, and so Rita, remember when? Oh yeah. And then remember, and before you know it, whoo, the time has passed by, I'm guessing.
Right. And as you probably well know, that is the job of you as the interviewer is to
Well, absolutely. Nora, we talked about the challenge of pricing and probably you alluded to earlier on, I think the challenge of standardizing the process as well. How did you find funding to get started?
I didn't.
You just
I just
self-funded out of the projects that you
completely
were able to
self-funded.
sell.
Yep,
Wow. And has that been the case ever since you started?
it has. And actually, this is the first point in my career. So how many years in?
Mm,
What are we looking at? Seven?
eight,
That
seven?
I am considering some outside funding sources, just because I feel
Wow.
like I have kind of hit a wall, like a ceiling of like there's only so many projects that we can do. I do feel like it does take a little extra money to kind of take your business to the next level. So I am
What are
just
some
kind of
of
in
the
the initial conversations.
what are some of the kinds of things that you can see it might need in order to be able to scale it and do more of these memory books?
Um, Advertising is a big bucket that I would love to have more money to play and experiment with. That's a big one. Being able to reliably bring on staff and pay them what they're worth. That is just having kind of a reliable source of income that could help me ensure payroll and that sort of thing. I believe strongly that people should get paid for what they're worth. So I
That includes you,
definitely,
though, Nora, right?
yes, yes, it does. I am unfortunately sometimes the last person on that list, but thanks for the reminder, Doris.
It's all too common. I mean, I think that's true, especially for women entrepreneurs. We women are the helpers and the facilitators and want to help make people happy. And sometimes the last person on the list is I say that, Nora, because I'm very guilty of that. So when I see it in others, I'm all too aware of it. Yeah, so the technology side of things. I mean,
Right.
I'm
I was
just
just
think
kind of going through in my head all the things
I
that
well,
cost.
yeah,
It
so
all costs a lot.
yeah, talk about that piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's like a death by a thousand cuts when I think about how many costs go into running a business. All the licensing for our software tools that we use, which it seems to change and add on a daily basis,
Hmm.
especially as you bring more help on board.
Oh yeah,
Oh, you
because you
need
have to
you need
have
an
new
additional
licenses.
license.
Yeah, wow, I
Yeah.
didn't think about that.
So, and I mean, these systems are great. There's a reason why people use them and to create efficiencies and that sort of thing. It's like the bigger you get, the more you need these systems to help streamline and, um, you know, make you into a better business owner here. So, but
Have you
it does cost money for
have
sure.
you have you thought at all about creating a platform of your own? Would there be value in doing that, or is it that the right tools already exist? It's just that there's a bunch of them.
I have thought of, especially with my IT background, it's more the actual project process would be neat to have some proprietary software around, especially when it comes to sharing projects back and forth with clients and
Hmm.
sharing digital photos.
Right.
Right now I'm kind of using a hodgepodge of tools to do that some have more of a learning curve. And when I'm working with 90 plus year olds, to have a tool that be super easy to use that anyone, at any age could use would be, I mean, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. Well, that would certainly, if you could imagine and execute on that, would certainly make your business a lot more valuable to outside investors. There's no question about that. So, what resources along your journey have been particularly helpful for you?
Um, well, I immediately think of the Founding Moms. That is a group of women, mother entrepreneurs that I found early on in my business. And I
Oh,
believe
good
she's
for
been on your
you.
show, Jill Salzman
Yeah,
is
Jill
the head of that.
Saltzman. Have to put in a plug for Jill. She is an absolute dynamo. And one of the funniest people I have ever met, really. I was going to say had on the show, but she's right up there in terms of people that I've met. She has a way of taking a challenge and turning it into something funny and making us laugh at ourselves, right?
Yeah. And that's what you need when you're first starting out and you're so vulnerable and you don't know what you're doing. You need someone to be like, hey, none of us know what we're doing. That's why it's, it's so wonderful to get together and kind of swap these stories like battle wounds and that sort of thing.
So talk about the Founding Moms just briefly and how it's helped
Sure.
you and, what it's meant to you, I guess.
Just to have almost like it's like a gut check on things. When you had mentioned kind of running a business, so especially a solopreneurship, it can be lonely and you second guess decisions a lot. And so to have a group of women that just are there to support you, that are going through some of the same issues. And what always surprises me is how different our businesses are. But when you boil down like the top three problems or pain points, it's the same. They're the same pain points.
Huh.
It doesn't even matter your industry.
Interesting. Interesting. And so
So,
are the Founding Moms is like a networking group that gets together regularly in person or more
yep,
event
there's both.
based or all of the
There's
above?
all the above. They have in-person exchanges where you can meet face to face. There's online exchanges as well. There is, just a kind of message board to throw questions out. There are classes and webinars kind of running constantly. So it's support, it's education, it's just all the things that you need as a small business
Perspective, it
owner.
sounds like
Perspective.
perspective
Yep.
and a shoulder to lean on, maybe sometimes.
Yes. And half the time, all the things that you're hearing, but you just need to hear it another time, you know.
Right.
Like Jill's mantra is raise your prices, raise your prices, raise your
Yeah.
prices.
Yeah,
So,
she's quite an advocate for women business owners, which is great to see. Any other resources that you found helpful along the way? Friends, family, associations, books? I mean,
um, I've joined in other groups, local chambers of commerce. I've tried. I did some kind of pro bono storytelling work for our local community here in Jefferson Park
oh,
because it bothered me that I wasn't telling the stories of my own neighborhood. And I think that's where I struggle with the pricing thing is I realize that in order to price it in a way that's fair to me, it often prices out a lot of people. So I did a Northwest Side Hero campaign where people could nominate neighbors, leaders in their community that just needed some recognition. And I basically would sit down with them and give them the time and space to tell their story. And it was
how
great.
wonderful.
Yeah, I did that kind of early on in my business. I unfortunately just have gotten a little too busy to be able to keep that up, but I would like to get back to it. And I have faith that I will because it was great. It was, yes, I'm giving back to the community, but I'm also kind of scratching that itch that goes back to what we started at the top of our conversation about just telling ordinary stories,
Hmm.
just getting them out there and kind of just really making sure people feel valued no matter who they are, no matter what kind of life they led.
Well, I have a feeling well, I'll let you answer this rather than guessing. What's been the best part about owning and running your own business?
Hmm. I think the freedom which is a double-edged sword, right?
Oh yeah, because you don't have a boss, but then you have this boss that's the person inside your head. So,
hmm Yeah, having the freedom to do things the way I want to do them at the time that I want to do them, at the pace that I want to do it. Um, I mean, that's something I never had working for somebody else.
yep,
And I have two small kids that um, it's really kind of priceless the amount of just flexibility it's given me
yeah.
to be able to take time off to show up to a school function or pick up a kid when they're sick and not stress about, you know, having to jump on a call. Like it's my business. I can reschedule it, and
Right.
um, so that is, I keep that in mind too. And, I definitely took a pay cut when I went, went down this line of work, but the kind of thing that you can't put a price on is that sort of kind of flexibility and the amount of time that I get to spend with my family.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what's been the hardest thing for you?
Probably it's kind of the same thing. The same answer is that it is all on me, and there can be some pressure that can also be kind of very frustrating when I know that I'm standing in my own way sometimes. I can't blame it on the boss.
Well, you can, but it's not really that helpful because,
Right, right.
you've
Yeah,
already beaten yourself up probably too much already that day.
right, right. Yeah, and I think the common problems that a lot of small businesses have and entrepreneurs that a lot of times the workflow is very feast or famine.
Right.
Um, so things get bunched up, I get stressed out. I'm
Mhm.
working, kind of crazy hours to try to manage it. And then, it quiets down. And guess what? I stress out because
Right, because the crickets are chirping, and will anyone ever
where's the
call
next
again?
client
Yeah.
coming?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that can be um, difficult to manage, but I
Yeah.
feel like I have gotten better at kind of evening out those emotions.
Well, I'm sure having people on tap to kind of help smooth out some of those bumps is helpful too. But
For sure.
it is hard when you're starting. It seems like it's feast or famine sometimes in service businesses. So, where would you like your business to be, let's say 5 years from now? What will Memoir for Me look like if you're successful in 5 years?
Without even going into like dollar amount goals, I would love to be in a place where I have um, a team that can handle every inch of the project. So almost like uh, planning myself out of it so that
You're
I
making
can
yourself
jump
redundant.
a little bit obsolete, but still having final say and kind of that more of an editor role than a chief writer. And
Yeah,
I am getting there to that point.
good for
I
you.
even envision stepping out of some of the interviews
Yeah.
and really I would love to focus on the education piece and be able to do some more of the pro bono work. You know, Spending more time on that side.
Hmm.
Um, so that would be ideal. I don't whether I get there in 5 years, maybe it's more of a 10-year goal. I don't know, but I am making moves to not be in every part of the process.
Well, I think that's
And
good. I mean, I
yeah,
always would tell my clients begin with the end in mind, and because it really does affect how you decide to who you decide to hire and what you decide to delegate and um what you want your life to look like. Because if it's like being on a bus. How does the bus get where it's going unless you have some idea of where you want it to go, right?
right. And just, you know, I I would love to be able to bring the storytelling to I've even done some organizational work where like this can very easily translate into different industries, whether it's telling business stories, like origin stories. I've done some of that
Oh,
work, but I just think there's really a
non
lot of
a
places that
lot
I
of
could
non
go from.
a lot of nonprofit groups. I'm thinking,
Yeah,
um, you start to, I mean, garden clubs and community theater organizations and the orchestra I'm in is celebrating its 75th anniversary, and they kind of want to do a memorial kind of thing. I don't know. if this is the kind of memorial they want to do. But all those, but they, who knows, they might, so there's those kinds of occasions for organizations like that.
Right. So being able to have more time and space to actually think about those possibilities would be, that's kind of like my goal.
Yeah. Beyond pricing and charging what we're worth, which I agree is a chronic problem for women entrepreneurs. It's a problem for a lot of entrepreneurs, but I think especially women entrepreneurs, at least that's my opinion. But what, in your experience, having been through lots of founding mom meetings and I'm sure networking with lots of other women entrepreneurs, what, in your experience, are some of the biggest challenges that women entrepreneurs in particular seem to face in starting and growing a business?
Specific to women, I think, and this does tie in with pricing, is kind of that imposter syndrome. Just feeling confident enough in your own skill set to believe yourself as an authority in whatever space you're in, to speak from a place of authority, to kind of carry yourself from a place of authority. I find that's a challenge, especially for people still starting out and still kind of finding their way. But yeah, just kind of like second guessing yourself. And I do think some of that just comes from time, like doing the work and putting the hours in. And that's another reason why I love speaking on shows like this, or I love speaking to groups. I've done some elder community groups with elders, kind of telling them why their story is important and get like really just inspiring people to think about it. I just think the more I'm out there kind of spreading the message, the more it feeds back into me and gets me inspired, and also helps with the confidence factor of like,
Mm.
I do know what I'm talking about. I have done this enough that there is value in it.
And my work matters. My business,
Yes.
my work, and my time matters. Yeah. And you're making a difference for lots of people along your journey. So, given your own journey, what advice would you offer to entrepreneurs just getting started, especially women entrepreneurs?
Well, a couple things. I'd say one, ask for help. Don't be nervous to admit that you don't know what, you might not, just asking for advice. Like some people just are so nervous to even ask questions because they feel like they're admitting they don't have all the answers.
Yeah. No, I get it.
uh,
Yep.
and who of us did when we were first starting?
Right.
I still don't have all the answers. I never will. Yeah, just asking for help, and that help can be in any different way, and it might just be just advice or something. It's not necessarily like boots on the ground. It's also just like feedback, right? I'd
Yeah.
also definitely tell people that it is a long game. I remember when I launched my website, I remember going out with my husband and getting and literally checking my phone to see if business kind of would, I'd be getting knocks
Yeah.
on the door, emails in the inbox like instantaneously. Like
Oh,
I'm
wow.
just, yeah. I
It
mean,
takes a long, especially social media stuff, I found just takes a long time, especially for service businesses. I mean, maybe if you have a, cool scarf or some impulse buy thing, either in your business's e-commerce kind of thing, maybe people go, "Oh, gotta have that." But when you're in a service business, I think it just takes a long time. It
it's a
certainly
long time.
takes a lot
It's
longer than I ever imagined, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I always tell the story that, some people don't like we have a monthly newsletter that goes out, and it's got, certain components in it. One's, a little blog about capturing stories and that sort of thing. And it does take a little time, but I enjoy doing it. And I've been doing it. And I signed a client last summer who signed up for my email list 2 years ago. So it's just,
Wow.
I
Yeah,
mean, to me, that is just answers the question of like, it is all worth it. You may not see the results right away. Um, and it's also okay to launch it when it's 90% or whatever that number is that you're comfortable with, because you're never going to have it perfect. So just launch it. Just get out there and just do it, and kind of tweak along the way, make those adjustments along the way.
Those are great pieces of advice. Thanks for sharing both of those. One topic we haven't talked about, and that is the do-it-yourselfers out there. So I am sure it would be great if lots of people heard this and picked up the phone and said tomorrow, Nora, you got to help me do this. But there's also probably if everybody who could do that and thought about it and wanted to do it all picked up the phone at the same time, you probably couldn't handle it anyway. So for those people who may think about doing some of pieces of it, do it yourself, or maybe even a whole project, what advice do you offer them?
To do it, I definitely am. Whether you use a company like ours or do it yourself, I'm hugely supportive um, of that. And I just say there's lots of free resources out there. As you know, Doris, when you mentioned the scrapbook for your mom,
Oh,
it does take
you can go broke. I will just say that. You can go broke and basically end up with a Joann's or Michael's or Hobby Lobby in your basement. Beware of that.
But what I was going to say is the amount of time that these things take. That's just something you have to be willing to put in, more so than the cost. Because really, what it all boils down to is, what if you're just capturing someone's stories, in essence, if that's all you're doing, there's no cost involved. You can whip out your phone and press record on voice memo and go from there. There's no cost there. Or grab a notepad and just start asking questions. It's and from our website has some free questions if you want to sign up. It's memoirforme.com. There's a nonprofit called StoryCorps. It's story and then CORPS, Corpse,
Oh,
StoryCorps. They have their mission is to capture everyday stories, and they have a free phone app that I have recommended to people that has sample questions. You can actually record it through their app, and you can upload stories to the Library of Congress through their phone app. So
wow.
it's a beautiful
Very cool.
nonprofit. I always donate to them, and so that's a free resource out there. So it's really, there's nothing. This isn't rocket science. I am fully admitting that really this is something that anyone can do, especially if you're doing it with your own loved ones. But it is a labor of love, and so some people just don't have that luxury of time, or maybe they just would rather outsource it, and so then we're absolutely happy to help.
Yeah. Or they end up towards the end of their life with an ungodly number of digital photos and not sure what to do with them. But, the only other thing I would add, having done now a couple of scrapbooks, is that, is take pictures of those, or try to remember to take pictures of those family events and even do some voice recordings when people are swapping stories because as we shared just before the show started, my mom passed away very recently. And I so wish that I had had a few more photos of her doing certain things that I remember, or I certainly wish I had more voice recordings of her sharing her advice and some of her stories. So think
Yeah,
about that because when those important people are gone in your life or no longer able to tell their story, it's too late to, to try to
yeah. People
capture
take
it.
their stories with them. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it sadly is something that you take for granted until it's sometimes too late. But for anyone that might be listening that has lost someone, I always do remind them that you have their stories in you, and your memories of a loved one is also worth capturing. So You might be missing a parent or a grandparent, but you have stories and memories of them, and those are worth celebrating too. So it's never
Right.
too late.
Right. And if you don't do it, then some of those memories, a lot of them will be lost by the time it's your time to pass.
Hmm.
So do it.
Do it.
Nora, one last question before I let you go. If people want to learn more about Memoir for Me, which I think you did give the website, but I want to give you a chance again to remind people of where to go to check out uh, your products and where and services and where to go for more information. Or maybe they just want to connect with you. Something you've said today sparked their interest. What's the best way for people to learn more?
Our website, and it is a tricky word, so I'm just going to spell it memoirforme.com. It's memoirforme.com. And we do have a free interview toolkit. If you want to drop an email with us, that's how you download our free kit to tell your own story or that of a loved one on your own. So that's a good
Wonderful.
free resource.
Yeah.
And then we have social media pages that I drop photos and stories up there from some of the projects we're working on. So that's a lot of fun. It's just at Memoir for Me, spelled the same way.
And of course, they can always check out a Founding Moms event and maybe they'll run into you in person, right?
Yep. So right now I am running the Chicago Exchange. It is an online group. I think they are moving to an in-person group soon. So
Fun.
I'm excited. I'm excited to check that out and see where that goes. But it's definitely a great tool for any woman, mom, business owner. Check out.
I will keep an eye on that. I can't wait to see how it evolves. Nora, thanks so much for joining me this week on the show. It was a delight having you.
It was a lot of fun, Doris. Thanks for having me.
Folks, thanks so much for listening. You, my listeners, are the reason I do this. So I want to stress that if you have comments, questions, about some aspect of your business. You have requested topics. Maybe you know a great guest, or maybe you want to be a guest, or just want to shoot the breeze. I would love to hear from you. You can email me at dnagel, Nagel, at thesavvyentrepreneur.org. I promise you'll always get an answer back from me. You can also check out my website, thesavvyentrepreneur.org, where I have a growing library of past radio show interviews and podcasts, as well as blogs and tools, all of which are free. So I encourage you to check out the site. There's some phenomenal, phenomenal interviews out there, some amazing entrepreneurs just like you and just like Nora. So once again, thanks to my guest this week, Nora Kerr, the founder of Memoir for Me. Be sure to join me again next Saturday at 11 a.m. Central Time. I'm Doris Nagel, wishing you happy entrepreneuring.